Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. Hazrat Inayat Khan. In an eastern rose garden. The attainment of power. The possession of power brings with it the desire to attain more. We can attain everything that we desire if we only know how. No one attains a higher position unless he follows some hidden trend. The tendency to arrive at some perfection is that which causes one to attain a greater perfection. Even if he attains wealth, a man is tending towards perfection. Napoleon attained something hidden, which was great and wonderful, if we could only understand it. So a merchant may perhaps have begun by selling empty bottles and ultimately becomes wealthy enough to be able to found colleges, libraries, hospitals, and so forth, which proves that there was an inclination to a certain perfection. Even though the ideal may not be so high, the very inclination to attain power is a great force. There is a spiritual, psychic, occult, telepathic power. How are we to attain to that? The soul feels, I am a king, but in this mortal casket I have become a pauper, or as Rumi expresses it, I was created free, but in this flesh I am in captivity and have become weak. From an almighty state of being we have become helpless beings. When we become conscious of spirit, we become conscious of a mighty power hidden, and our spirit is then the expression of the almighty power. The power is in unity, but is lost in variety. Thus, for instance, if we hold a thing in our hand, we can hold it with strength, because all 5 fingers have united to hold the object. But if we try to lift it by one finger, this one finger may drop it, even though the finger belongs to the same hand. In all aspects of life, unity is power. All religions show that power is in unity. This is the secret of philosophy. There are 2 aspects of unity. Firstly, the unity of variety. Secondly, unity realizing itself. One is earthly, the other is heavenly. One cannot serve 2 masters. Unity is the only source of happiness. Unity in realization is far greater than unity in variety. When 2 hearts unite, they can break even mountains. As 2 fuse in love, the more does intuition grow, the more does one understand whether the other is happy, or pleased, or displeased, whatever distance may separate them. This is nothing but just the unity of the one person with the other. It is clairvoyance. The mother knows the condition of her son at the battlefront. She can see him in her dreams. Hearts, which are united in love, perceive the state of mind of the loved ones. They do not have to study mysticism or concentration, for they have natural concentration. The mother does not pretend to meditate. Love teaches her more meditation than a person who pretends to study it can attain. One cannot, however, hold an object in mind when the heart has nothing to do with the object. Pebbles are not made to eat, and therefore one cannot eat them. The mind is never so satisfied with either an object or a being, which it does not desire. Therefore it is no use to concentrate especially on what the heart does not desire. The heart, which does desire, needs no special concentration. Nothing gives greater power of confidence than love. If one loves a person, one has confidence in that person. Hence the mother is as a god to her child. The hen is the most timid of birds until she has chickens. At that time she is under the spell of love, and would not hesitate to fight even an elephant if he were endangering her brood. This shows the power of love. Can any charm or amulet be more powerful than this? The one with a loving heart will travel furthest. Power can be attained artificially, by magic, or by the different laws of the power of sound, of words, or of concentration. Such power can make a person ill, can make a person run away from the country, can make two hearts separate. Many wonders can be performed by the power of concentration. We do not exist only as body, we exist as heart, as soul. If the heart is kept dead all our life, and we give the body all the things it wants, soft cushions and comforts, is this all we need? The heart is still hungering. The heart wants to see that it is living. The heart longs to be alive. It has been created to love, and it is not loved, it wants to melt. But though it wants all the love and kindness to come to it, it withholds giving when the time comes for it to give. We accept love when love is offered to us, but when the time comes to give we do not give. But can love really be given? Is love trade? Until this is known, it is impossible to understand love. To love is to possess a heart, but not as a demon possesses a human being. When a person comes alive, this means that he has become the possessor of a heart. Whose heart? Heart is that factor of our being, of our thinking, which feels within itself a longing to express love. It is an awakening of love and to a feeling of love. This is the factor which produces thought. This is the factor which produces feeling. In this lies the creative power. All the power which one can possibly wish to attain throughout life is reached by this means. How can power develop in the absence of unity? Suppose everyone had magnetic power. They would make all the money they could from their clients. Would it be just for some to possess the power of making money, and for others to be perpetually their victims? No, and that is why mysticism was kept hidden, for the protection of these others. Those who are not worthy of the hidden knowledge would use their power for selfish purposes, for themselves and for those who belong to them. If ordinary people had this power, one could not even compare them with the devil. Rishis, saints, and sages have experienced the selfishness of man. They know it would be bad for the world if this hidden knowledge were revealed. And who deserves to be illuminated with this knowledge? He alone deserves it who develops his soul in the thought of unity, and he alone receives it. The progressive steps of enlightenment and the use of power are shown when a man transfers his ambitions first to his family, and then from his family to his city, from his city to his nation, from his nation to the whole world, and from the whole world to the whole universe. When the joy of every person he sees is his joy, when the pain of every person is his pain, then he becomes a conqueror and attains power. What the power of breath can do. Breath, being the secret of all being, is the most important of all things. Whether we have a fine body or not has nothing to do with it. If we gain in weight, we are only getting a heavier coat, but our true being is the breath. When the breath has left the body is useless. Therefore the importance of our being lies in the breath. Breath is God. If God is manifest in anything, it is in breath. The activity of our physical being depends on our breath. This keeps up the rhythm of the pulse and the rhythm of the beats of the brain. The centers are kept up by the rhythm. If the rhythm stops, the centers stop. As the tick of the watch, so is the swing of the breath. According to the rhythm, so is the condition of the body. Disorder in breath means illness. In anger, the rhythm of breathing is much quicker, even so much as to make speech impossible. The saying, "speechless with anger," is proverbial. Therefore, the breath acts on the mind as well. The lion, the leopard, and other fierce creatures have a very irregular breath. There is no rhythm. They are short-lived. The cobra never becomes excited. It breathes slowly and attracts its food from any distance by mere concentration of will. It is very long-lived. Breathing is the effect of breath. It is really a vibration rising and falling. There is a vibration in all things, in life and birth, and consequently all things have rhythm. It is the activity of God and nothing else. There are different rhythms for the day, the hour, the minute, and for 40 days. There is a connection between this rhythm and the life of the universe like so many candles and lamps. Word, light, creation. The breath is the word. We cannot utter a word without breath. But a word is double as it consists of breath and sound, and breath stands by itself. The sense comes before the sound. Athletic exercises are basically exercises of breathing. A porter does not become physically developed because he does not use his breathing for that purpose. He has had exercise without benefit. If the breath did not manifest through the voice, it would manifest in some other way, as the absent sound of thought. Wherever it is directed, it will go. If you do not speak and yet think the same thought, the breath will travel silently. People think they cannot hear except with their ears. They are so attached to their physical body. But as soon as a man is convinced that he can hear without ears, he will do so without speech. One can tell that a person is angry without his speaking, because he reveals it in his whole vibration. The very way a person says yes tells you whether he is willing or not willing. It depends on the character of the breath at that moment. People who live a material life reveal it because the breath becomes material and makes a noise. It has become so dense that it actually makes a noise. In refined persons, the breath is also fine. Cows and camels and buffaloes make a noise when they breathe. This at once shows the fineness or coarseness of the individual. Those who perceive these things can see them clearly. All the different moods that we are in, inclination to laughter or crying, heaviness, exultation, or meditation, all result from the breath. It changes in activity so many times during the day and night. As it changes, it expresses a certain element, earth, water, fire, air, or ether, and it makes one feel inclined to do certain things in accordance with the element. All the different desires originate in breath, even the character of a person, even his luck, all depend on the breath. Those who know the mystery of breath can read the soul. Breath is a link from God to man. Breath is purified by prayer. Fire worshippers keep a fire before them in order to keep their breath in rhythm. The science of breath is only transmitted by word of voice from the teacher when he sees someone worthy to learn. There are 3 stages. Jalal, force of breath; Jamal, the gentleness of breath; Kamal, perfection of breath. The latter stage culminates in miracles. A book is a dead teacher. People continually send their breath into undesirable centers. It is essential to have a living guide and not to try and study from books. A pure and good life is far better for the breathing. Do not let tranquility be disturbed, and the rhythm of the breath will keep regular. The mind will keep in good condition and the body healthy. Do not be too attached to anything in the world. Do not be a slave to anything. Be beyond all desires. Observe the law of cleanliness, the law of balance, doing good to others, having good wishes, good thoughts, keeping a high ideal, and always wishing to attain the ideal. By doing these things, the breath itself will become fixed in the same mold. The knowledge of past, present, and future. What need is there of effort in life if the future is already settled? Asks one. Says another, there is no predestination, for everything that happens is caused by ourselves. A person may be trying to do good, and yet may always find it turning to bad. Such a one comes to ask, is there any interference by spirits? The Sufi studies what darkness is in order to understand the light. That is Sufism. The artist paints a picture in 3 stages: preparatory, stage of action, and stage of completion, past, present, and future. The first stage is the design of the picture. That is predestination. We all begin with this. We are the manifestation of the eternal Son, and therefore, all the attributes of the Creator must be in the creature. Before doing anything, do we not plan it? In our mind we have created it. The Creator acted thus, and so do we. We do it with a pen. He does it with nature. His art is nature. The Quran says that Allah taught man by the pen of his nature. It is our nature to create, and by creating our art in harmony with nature, we can improve our skill. The art we produce is according to the nature of ourselves, for we are the creator. Secondly, the picture appears on the paper. This is the present stage. Thirdly, the picture itself inspires the painter. As it progresses, he sees that in a certain place there ought to be a different color. This is not right, that is not right, and so on. And as he looks at the picture, he sees its faults, and so he alters it here and there. So it is with each life. One stage of our life is predestined, the next part is that which we perform, and a third part of our life is that which is the effect of our actions. As we sow, so we reap. All that we do, we see in its reaction, and the reaction changes our life. The painter sees he must finish the picture differently, and so our actions tell us whether we ought to act differently. A man always wants to know things he does not know. This dates from infancy. Children break things to see what is inside. But man does not know how to know. He expects too much. When he knows how to know, then heaven and earth are both revealed to him. If we want to see what is on the 7th floor, we must leave the ground floor. If we are on the 1st floor and cannot get to the higher floors, it means, as mysticism shows, that we certainly do wish to go up, but are captives on the 1st floor. That is the captivity. Rumi said, "The bamboo flute, what is it that the flute says that makes you like it so much? Why does it mourn? Why does it so attract your attention? What is it that appeals to you? It mourns for the separation that it suffers because it has been parted from its home and has lost its original plant, the bamboo. It was cut off from its proper place. It mourns for the days when it was one with the whole bamboo tree. It mourns for the joy and the peace which it has enjoyed but can never receive again. It is the parting for which it mourns and through which it appeals to you. So it has been with man. Man wishes to know about God, about heaven, about things unknown, and about the world unseen, and he thinks he can see them from the 1st floor. He is not ready to believe there is anything on the 7th floor. He thinks there is no such thing as the 7th floor, nothing but the 1st. If he were freed from this delusion, and if he were allowed to go to the other floors, then he would be able to see what the 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th floors contain. And then he would know there is something through which one can gain a knowledge of past, present, and future. Suppose on the third floor there was a machine which produced instruments. One would know that on the first floor there must be a store of materials, and on the second floor they must be assembled in groups. On the third floor they are turned into usable appliances, and one can guess what is likely to be on the fourth floor. Thus it is said in the Hadith that God sent his servant, the Prophet, in the middle of the night to the sphere of heaven, where he showed him such signs as he desired to show him. In other words, God wants the one who wishes to realize him, to know life. It is his desire that he may see the signs that God previously makes and arranges, and also the things which can be seen by rising to the third and fourth floors. The floors represent planes of existence. We do not exist only on the earthly physical plane. Being absorbed in this plane makes us awake to it, but blind to the others. Language fails to explain the things of heaven. Those who have the experience of such things are bound to be silent, because there is no language to express them. As a matter of fact, all the floors are really here. But, as long as we are not able to see these floors, we are only on the first. Then, too, this mortal part must die. But we can die in this respect now, and pass on now to a perception that is beyond. The several floors are nothing but clothing. In this life, the light is hidden under a bushel. The bushel is the physical body. The light cannot be disclosed until the mortal part is removed. If we depend on our eyes for sight, and our ears for hearing, and our mouth for speech, we are still dead. But we sometimes experience in life that which we see without eyes, hear without ears, and express without speech. If we have once seen without eyes, does it not show that we can see without eyes? Can we not see in a dream without eyes? Therefore, the faculty of seeing and hearing is in us. But, as we always depend on the physical body, on the physical eyes and ears, we become helpless and subject to death. The teaching of immortality is to awaken. We must rise above the physical and material conditions if we are to live at all. We must aim at being independent of physical sight and hearing. We know that if we really want to understand a thing, we close our eyes because we can see it better. If we are thinking in this manner, it means that we are listening to some thought coming from some other plane. At such a time we want to cut off and stop outward sound or sight. All the meditations and concentrations of the mystics, as well as their dreams, are their journeys to the inner planes. It is necessary, if the soul has the desire to know the past, the present, and the future, to satisfy its desire by a contemplative life. The more tired and exhausted the mind, the more is meditation needed. Sages, such as Saint Francis, have spoken with rocks, birds, and animals, not as we talk, but by means of an insight into things. And every object expressed itself to them, speaking to them about its past, its present, and its future. How wonderful that the animals and birds also know the future. Horses, dogs, cats know when someone is going to die. Yet, man does not know it. Why should he not know it? Because his soul is so absorbed in the earth plane and in earthly things, which the birds and beasts and animals are free from. For they sit quietly and meditate and concentrate. Man never sits quietly. Therefore, the animals and birds, through their silence, are capable of knowing what man does not know. All man's activity brings death and decay much sooner. Intuition is stifled. The soul has the tendency to look forward to what is going to be, or at what has been in the past. It is the light of our soul, the intelligence, that does this. Intelligence working through physical means is no greater than intellect. But intelligence working freely and independently from physical means is wisdom. And wisdom is not cleverness, but infinitely superior to it. Wisdom works independently of the physical means, and therefore, requires intuition. The clever person works by means of his physical body, but the wise person works independently of it. Palmistry, astrology, and the like. Are they the best means of knowing the future? All these means are right, none is wrong. There is always truth everywhere. The eye must look, and at whatever it looks, the seer will see. It is not necessary for the vision to be in a certain symbol or teacup. It is as open as a book wherever the seer looks. The master knows everything that goes on in a factory. But the workers only know what goes on just where they are working. The master sees all. One person sees a square, another a street, another a house, another less still. But the one at the top of the tower will see all of these. The seer will see all in his consciousness, and wherever he casts his glance, he will see still more clearly. As Sati says, each leaf of a tree becomes a book of revelation to the one who sees. And he reads the whole of nature as a book. Spirits and spiritism. Spirit in its true sense is the essence. The spirit of anything means its essence. And when we consider the true essence, there is only one. When we consider the true spirit, there is only one spirit. But of course, in the world of variety, one life is many lives, and one thing has many manifestations. This manifestation makes us see many forms and many names of a one and only being, and when we overlook the oneness of that being and direct our attention to the variety of manifestation, we see that the spirit of each thing is its essence. The spirit of jasmine, the spirit of a rose, and so on. Each has its own individuality, its own essence. Spirit, as understood by the generality, is the remainder of man's existence. After man's body had died, what remains of him is considered to be spirit, which is a very beautiful name in Sanskrit, but, that is, the one who has been. The spirit world distinguishes itself as different and distinct from the spirit experiencing the world through the body. The spirit of camphor is not the color or form of the substance, but the odor of camphor has existed in its spirit. The spirit of cinnamon is the fragrance and the effect that it has. The effect is still left after its form and substance have gone. Every object in this world, after it has vanished, leaves a mark of its essence, just like a flower. When the essence is taken from the flower, its external form is ruined, but it has left something which is its own. Both body and spirit are man. Man is a double spirit. Man in his cloak, his physical body, is more complete than a spirit alone. When the flower is living and its spirit has not been taken away from it, both the flower and its spirit are joined. A person whose sense of discrimination and feeling is well developed may find that a visitor coming into the house brings with him a certain influence. Good feeling or bad feeling, an irritable feeling or a blissful feeling. There is something with him besides his knowledge, besides his beauty. When he leaves the house, his body leaves, and together with it is strength and beauty, all that is material in him. Yet, there is something left in that room for a certain time after he has gone. The whole atmosphere is charged and we feel that there is something left there. The more keenly we watch life, the more wonderful it is. All the miracles and phenomena are before us. Our everyday life is a miracle. If we are only absorbed in things which are material and not in things of a delicate character, we do not see this because we blunt our sensitivity. It is then that we think that what we do not see or perceive does not exist. Consider, for instance, how infectious yawning is. This shows we can never say there is nothing beyond what the eyes and flesh can see. Influence goes out from a living person and affects others in the vicinity. If the influence is so strong during life, shall it not exist after he is dead? Only the influence remains after he has left, yet how much greater must it then be? The light of the moon is the light of the sun. There are two actions of sense, which are in fact two actions of the whole being: expressiveness and responsiveness. The whole universe works on these two principles. As soon as the expressing spirit expresses itself, the responsive spirit receives its impression, just as a person whose picture is taken by a camera yields his impression when the camera is properly adjusted. If the camera is not rightly placed, there will be no image on the plate. If a spirit has a fondness for someone and desires to be in the thought of this beloved one all the time, always near him, then just like the camera taking a photograph of someone, this unconscious spirit of man naturally takes the impression coming from that spirit. Child prodigies may be the result of influence. Under this influence they may work, speak, write poems, dispute, and so on. If someone dies with the thought of revenge that he could not accomplish, or had not the courage to accomplish, he may find a living person, a youth, perhaps a child, who performs the act for the spirit without even knowing why. Murders may even happen in this way. The brain may be deficient in thinking power. The body may react on thought, and sometimes the thought may react on the body. Could not the mind produce decay in the brain, or is it true that it is always bodily strain that brings strain of mind? Or does anger bring strain on the body? The trouble usually comes from within. Hallucinations sometimes arise from thought and mind, either in the same person or in some other person. We call it obsession when it comes from without. Sometimes the living person can be the expressive one while the spirit responds. We cover our spirit under our body. We cover our light under a bushel. We never allow the spirit to become conscious of itself. We are not doing spirits any good by calling them back when they have no body. Why not let them forget the experiences of this world of illusion, rather than attract them? What good will it do to them? One should only trouble others when one needs them very much. We should use ourselves as the vehicle of all experiences. We can communicate much better with another person who is clothed like us than we can with a spirit. Is not God enough for our souls, and is He not sufficient to inspire us and to illuminate our wills and guide our souls? Is He any less of a friend here or in the spirit life? He is the great well-wisher. In Him mercy is complete. He is the soul of all souls. When we devote ourselves to the thought of Him, all illumination and revelation are ours. God communication is the best communication that true spiritualism can teach us. If we give all our wealth to the universe as a whole, no single person receives much. But it is a great accomplishment actually to realize God. It means that a very high degree of spirituality has been attained. It is most difficult to attain such a conviction of God that there is not the slightest doubt. But, if someone does reach it, even the thought of Him will bring blessing. It becomes a privilege to be his friend. It is a privilege because he is the friend of God. A person possesses the knowledge which he has attained as he possesses the wealth which he has acquired. And so when the soul is illuminated, it will desire to find some other soul illuminated in like manner, and will find great joy and bliss in its society. Such a one will surely find others who are on the verge of illumination. Even a drunkard will find others to drink with. And so it is mystically. A very little light can be turned into a flame, and that flame into a very big flame. Why is it better to become a mystic than to remain a drunkard? As a matter of fact, a drunkard will never be satisfied. The mystic will look for what Omar Khayyam calls wine, the wine of the Christ, after drinking which no one will ever thirst. He will always seek the wine whose intoxication never wears off. It is the only wine. The intoxication of the divine love. The master mind. In the first place, what is the mind? Is it the intelligence of the brain? Is it the activity of the brain? Or is it something else? When a person limits the word mind to brain, he certainly puts cause and effect on the same level. There are two ways of looking at things. One looking from the cause to the effect, the other from the effect to the cause. The first is like looking from the top of the mountain to the foot. The other is like looking from the foot of the mountain to the top. The one who looks from the foot often fails to see what is going on at the top. Therefore, the mystic follows the other way. He perceives that a person who investigates a higher truth by standing at the foot of the mountain may sometimes succeed in seeing what is at the top, yet sometimes he will not. Even when he does see, he does not see fully. It is different when a person looks from the top of the mountain to the foot. That is why the mystic goes to the cause and sees from the cause to the effect. But the great thing is to get to the cause. It is easy to agree with the teaching of Jesus Christ, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things shall be added." This teaching may be applied even in the investigation of human life, for as soon as one reaches the root of the cause, one can see the light, and the light guides one. But what is difficult is to get in when one is on the outside. Humanity has striven after truth for ages, and yet there is no period in the history of the world in which some of mankind have not realized the truth. The only difference is that one says, "I have discovered something," and the other says, "There is nothing new under the sun." The mystic's view is, "What I have known today has been known before, and will be known afterwards. It has never been known by all, and will never be known by all. But, as the sight becomes keen, so man will be able to see." In the first place, what the master mind is really explained by the power of spirit over matter. When man sees that mountains are pierced through by the effort of man, that man has crossed the seas, and that he flies in the air, that in itself shows that he is the master of creation. But what is man? Is man a physical being, or is there something else called man? If the physical being is man, then what of the elephant, who is 20 times bigger? Then the elephant would never has listened for one moment to what the man says, and yet when he says, "Sit down," the elephant sits down, "Stand," and the elephant stands, "Walk," and he walks. At the same time the elephant is conscious of his heavy body and the strength that he has. Then not only the elephant, but the tiger and the lion, the kings of the forest as they call them in the East, we see them mastered in the circus by one man. Although these most brutal animals keep killing other animals and live by the terror they evoke, so conscious are they of their strength yet man has mastered them. Evidently there is something hidden in man. The word man means mind, and when the time came for mind to develop, man came into being. The physical being had been developed as long as the animal being. There is also the question as to whether every man can really claim to be human, or as to what a human mind should be. This is shown by the story that one day Diogenes went searching in the marketplace with a lighted lantern at midday. When they asked him what he sought, he answered, "A man." And Ghalib, a Hindustani poet of Delhi, has said in his verse, "There seems to be a difficulty in all things. It seems difficult even for a man to claim to be a man." The question is, what is the difference between man and animal? Is it not in the form of man? But if only the form is man, strictly speaking, all natural forms in this world gradually change into the human form. The more we study the life of birds, insects, creatures, or even the vegetable kingdom, the more plainly we shall see how the face of man has emerged, step by step, from the primitive preparatory stages, through all the different manifestations, until it has appeared as man. Thus, if it were only the form that makes man man, he would never have been called mind. So it is something beyond form that makes man. The whole matter is explained by Rumi in his Masnavi. Our life on earth is as a captivity, an imprisonment. An imprisonment in what? In a physical body, which covers the light of the soul. And the mind is also helplessly attached to the body. It is the bodily desires, passion, anger, appetite, all the different desires and needs, that make the mind helpless and make man hold on to them. All the worries, anxieties, depressions, and despairs arise from them. There is not a single moment in which the mind is able to stand aloof, so as to reflect the light within, the light of the soul. So limited has it been made by the limited existence on earth. In reality, this is the whole tragedy of human life. The one and only thing that hinders man from advancing spiritually, or at least from advancing towards the goal for which he is destined and which he is longing to attain, is this: that the mind is so absorbed by the demands and wants of the physical body that it has hardly a moment to give itself entirely to the reflection of the light of the soul. A person may say, "I do not even believe in such a thing as a soul, since there is no evidence of such a thing. I do not believe in a hereafter. I do not believe in anything spiritual or higher, only in what I see or enjoy in this worldly life." But what then? One could answer, you believe at least in being happy. You believe in happiness being something worth attaining in life. You also believe in living. You do not wish to die. Not only do you believe in these two things, but you believe in being left alone when you are tired, in being left in peace and having rest. You believe in understanding things you cannot yet understand. So he believes in four things. He may not believe in inspiration, revelation, or some higher spirit coming and instructing him, yet he believes in trying to understand things that puzzle him, in seeking to remove that cloud of confusion which veils the light that would guide him to the understanding of those very things which at present confuse him. So there is a longing in him to find out about something that he does not know. In every person, therefore, whether spiritual or material, whatever his outlook, there are these four inclinations or desires. To live, to save his life even to the extent of risking it, in order to defend himself against being killed, to be happy, enjoying the theater, music, dancing, singing, a game, sport, something that pleases, a desire to know, and a desire to have peace, to rest, to be left alone. Whether he believes in God, in spirit, in heaven, in a scripture, in a hereafter, or not, he certainly believes in these four things. They develop gradually. As one studies more and more the way to acquire these things, that study itself becomes a form of religion, and attainment to the root of the four things is spiritual perfection. The difference is only that one takes a religious path, another the path of wisdom, another the path of devotion, and another the path of the form or ceremonial of worship. Whichever way it be, the constant pursuit of these four things brings the attainment of the same goal in the end, the goal for every soul. Some paths lead there sooner than others, that is all. If we think more about the desire for happiness, we see that although every soul seeks after pleasure, or wealth, or position, or power to become happy, he finds that everything in life is changeable. Whatever pleasure, or success, or achievement he gains, are all forms of desire for happiness, and these can only be held like air. How long can one hold that? Is it not always slipping from one's hands, be it wealth or position? The most difficult thing in life is to hold it when one has it. It is true it is difficult to acquire, but how much more difficult to keep? Thousands of people are after it. How can we get it from him? They ask. Relatives, friends, enemies, thieves, everybody is contemplating his wealth. While he holds it tight, more and more worried about it every day. So on the one side there is the happiness of holding something, which is not his own, and on the other, the strain of keeping safe that which does not really belong to him, and which is changeable and temporary. This takes away his happiness. All the things that give happiness seem so great a prize beforehand. But, however much pleasure and comfort they may give, when it comes to paying the cost of having them, one begins to understand that there is no comfort or pleasure that is really worthwhile. As Omar Khayyam says, when man is seeking for happiness, all pleasures and comforts seem to be a blessing for that moment. But in the end, everything is dust. There is a beautiful story illustrating this idea. In the palace of a Mughal king, there was a housemaid, and once when making the bed she was overpowered by the sense of the beauty of the king's room, the fragrance all round, the windows open, allowing the cool breeze to come in, so grateful when the summers are as hot as in the east. She felt she would like to sit on the bed a moment and see how it felt. How very soft and nice and how very fragrant, she thought. And she sat there, and then felt she would like to lean back on the cushions. But, unfortunately she fell asleep. Then the king and queen happened to come in. He said, "What impertinence," and the queen was very displeased too. In a moment a whip fell on her back, and she got up in horror, and looked hither and thither, and then smiled. And the king and queen were astonished to see her smile on receiving the whip. Said the queen, "Why do you smile?" She said, "Oh, it was a thought." The king said, "Tell me the thought." She said, "The thought was that it is so fragrant in this room, and cool breeze so balmy and this bed so soft and comfortable, I thought I should like to see how it felt, and I slept. Perhaps I did not sleep for more than half an hour and you came, and I received the whip. By sleeping there for half an hour I received the whip, so I do not know what you will receive. You have been sleeping here for years together. This is a lesson. There is no pleasure to be gained without a cost. It may be at the cost of wealth or of time. It may even be at the cost of life. Man, Absorbed as he is in the pleasures and comforts of life, thinks very little of this, and goes on until the time comes when it is too late to think of it. Life has been nothing but a captivity to this constant longing for happiness and pleasure, which when it comes he finds himself unable to enjoy. So this teaches that the source of real happiness lies somewhere else. It is not in a building of sand that comfort can be got. The building in which one can get comfort is in oneself. Having discovered the nature of pleasures, one may well think, after all, these pleasures were just like lips touching the wine and not drinking it. The wine is somewhere else. But in the end, even the pleasure seeker comes to the same goal, that of the truth. The third thing is the constant desire to live. Every bird, every animal, even the smallest insect in the world, as soon as we try to touch it, it wishes to save its life, it runs away, it wants to live. Even if it lives in the dirt, its desire is to live. How dear life is to every creature. How much everybody wishes to live. At the same time, there is this force of destruction in the form of diseases and death, which sweep away so many. Yet still the desire in every heart is to live. This thought teaches that it is not believing in God, in spirit, in religion, that is the secret. It is the desire for life in every heart. This too, man can find by searching within himself. The life is hidden within him, and when he begins to find it, then he feels he is safe. If we think about the desire for understanding, we notice how everyone wishes to learn, to read, to study, to learn about things in every possible way. But the desire cannot be satisfied until the light within is disclosed by which he may understand. We come then to the truth that all things can be accomplished by mastery of mind. And so the question arises, how can the mind be mastered? The answer is that the mind cannot be mastered until a man is master of the body. The difference between a master mind and a person without mastery is the difference between a man sitting on a saddle horse, holding the reins in his hand, and a man trying to ride bareback, while the horse is bucking and going wherever it likes, and there is the fear that it will throw him at any moment. He is not able to control it. A person may realize all the various weaknesses in himself and be very sorry about them, and he would like to give them up if he could. But he finds that whether he likes some little weakness or not, he cannot hold himself back from doing certain things, whether it is weakness of mind or weakness of action. This shows that though the desire of the soul is always to direct man on the right path, on the path of virtue, on the good path, yet at the same time he has lost his control, and he is led astray by some force he cannot control. This weakness of character is shown when a person says, "I do not wish to be angry. After being angry I am very sorry, but at the same time I cannot help it. I do not wish to hurt others, but when the moment comes, I cannot help myself, I am abrupt." Then even vices such as drink, or thieving, or any weakness, are all caused by weakness of the mind. When the mind has no control over its thoughts and feelings, when it is not mastered, all these things come to pass. From all this it is plain that man has two aspects of being: the servant aspect and the master aspect. When only the servant aspect is nourished and the master aspect is not, then the master aspect of his being longs to be master and cannot be, and the whole conflict in life depends on that. When a person is interested in the master aspect and wishes to be master, then he becomes master of himself. And he becomes not only master of his thoughts, feelings, and actions, but he becomes master of his affairs. Then the key to what we call fate is in his hands. He becomes the king of the kingdom that has been given to him from God. And when he has arrived at that stage, then comes a still greater and more exalted stage, which may be understood in the following way. Sometimes we notice that a person is guided by someone, or listens to him, or gives in to him. Why does he do this? The answer is that the one who does not give in is the one with the master aspect alive in him. The person who gives in has the servant aspect alive in him. To understand this secret is to understand the secret of the spiritual hierarchy. It is the secret of the coming of the prophets and of the mastermind, of what is called the Superman. The picture of this is shown in Hindu symbology, where the devatas have 4 hands, 2 hands for the body, and 2 for the mind. The 4 make a perfect man. When there are only 2 external hands, material hands, and the other hands are not yet attached to the mind is not active and cannot control. These are these 4 different forces. The 2 physical arms and the 2 arms of the mind, which make life complete. The 4 arms that make the perfect man, the mastermind. Having these, he becomes responsible for his affairs as well as the affairs of others. And the people who have been leaders of nations, leaders of humanity, and have led humanity to the spiritual, the right, the religious path, have not done so just through their intellect. No, there was some other power behind. There are many intellectual people who from morning till evening spend every moment of their time in using their cleverness and polish of mind. But this is only an activity, it is not the power of mind. The power of mind is such that without speaking words the mind speaks. Without the help of words, the mind reflects what is in this mind or that. Things that the outer arms cannot accomplish, the arms of the mind can. Means are procured for the accomplishment of every object. In the ancient fairy tales about the jinns, it is said that one day a village teacher was teaching a class. Among them was a jinn, and he had taken the form of a boy. But the village teacher did not know that he was a jinn. One day he wanted something at a distance, and he asked the boy to bring it. This boy, instead of getting up, just stretched his hand and got it. And the teacher was so frightened that next day he would not come to school. This story tells us of the mastermind. It is not necessary to be of a certain age to have this mastery. Sometimes a child may have greater mastery than a grown-up and greater will. Therefore, it is not dependent on age. Where there is a will, there is a way. For a man to say, "Beware of me, I cannot keep a secret. I cannot control myself, I must tell it. I cannot manage this. I cannot remember that," all these weaknesses denote lack of mastery of mind. The mastermind shows mastery in everything. In speech, in listening, in understanding, in doing all things. Is this to be attained by contemplation, by concentration, by meditation? No, actually it is in our everyday life, in our simple everyday actions, that we develop the power of mind by this simple law. When we are doing some work and the desire comes, "No, I must go and rest and sleep," and we go and rest, we give in to our desire. We go and rest, but the work is not accomplished. Then a person may say, "I must not be abrupt, inconsiderate. I must have consideration from now on." Next day something happens in which he should be considerate and gentle, but he thinks, in this case it does not matter. It is a small thing. It is a very small thing, and gives in. The excuse comes to the rescue. But as soon as he gives in to a slight weakness, Next time he falls down again because the weakness wins every time. So every person seeking to attain mastery will find some weakness waiting for him. If it is not one weakness, then it will be another. The one who does not think of this law is neglectful. He may think it does not matter. It is only a little finger. But if the finger fails, next time his hand will fail. And in time he will be in the mouth of weakness until he is swallowed up by it. Then it has become too late. And when his power has gone, there is no strength. So what is the religion of a sage? Every religion is his religion, and yet no religion is his religion. His religion is that of wisdom. He masters the mind not only by all these things, but at the same time he practices this mastery by means of contemplation, by learning how to concentrate, and by learning how to live. For if he does not master his mind, concentration will not help him. If the small things are not controlled, how can he manage contemplation? How many people say, when we sit down to concentrate, our minds go to 1,000 things. We seem to be sitting in a chair, but our mind seems to be jumping all over the place. Where is the concentration? Therefore, it is helpful to concentrate, and it is helpful to be guided by someone who knows the path of concentration. But at the same time, if a person will not practice the law of mastery in his everyday life, and in everything, he will not be able to accomplish this great work. The desire of nations. In the works of a great Sufi teacher we find the words, "In order to know God, know yourself." It follows that in order to know the desire of nations or of people, we should first know our own desire. Until we know ourselves, we cannot know about others. As long as we are ignorant of our own life's needs and wants and of the secret of our own nature, we can never understand the needs and wants and the secret of another person's nature. In reality, we ourselves are a nation within ourselves. More than that, we are a whole universe within ourselves. Therefore, if we study the self, we shall find we can study not only a nation, but this whole world and even all other worlds. To study ourself means also the study of the primitive condition of man, and this again means the study of life in all its forms. We must also learn about the inclination of life in all forms. What is this inclination? There is a verse in the Bible which explains it, indirectly giving a hint of its secret, for in him we live and move and have our being. We live to move, and we move to make our being in God. Without moving we are not living. Without making our being we do not move, nor do we live. Therefore, it is the condition of life that if we live we should move and progress, and attain that state of being for which we are destined. We can see this inclination in every being. A little plant, a tree, if we suppress its growth, if we erect a fence round it, if we cover it with glass, it will not flourish, it will not produce flowers. In time, it will die. Why is this? It is because its life cannot express itself when it is covered, it cannot express itself when there is a fence round it. It is not enough for it to be alive, because life does not want only to live. To realize itself, life must be able to make progress, and progress is only made when there is free movement. We find the same inclination even in worms and insects. An ant has the same desire. We try to touch it, but it does not want us to touch it. We attempt to keep it in a certain place, but it does not want to stay there. However much we may say we will take great care of the parrots and the sparrows and the beautiful birds we keep in cages, saying we love them so much, It is no pleasure to them. Of course they will eat in their captivity if they are hungry. They will drink water when they are thirsty. But this is no sign that they enjoy themselves or that they are happy. Why should they be happy when it is not their life's inclination to be restricted? Life did not give a bird wings in order to stay in a cage. Wings were given as the means to enjoy life, to make a nest where the birds can live, to make the acquaintance of other birds, to enjoy the life in the jungle, and to find water and food for the comfort and ease of their family. It is in this way that they make their being. It is the same with animals and birds as it is with plants. For them also life means to have a being, to move it. It is what life demands. When we come to human life, do we not find it the same too? However much we love our child and say, "Sit here, I would so much like you to be here," it will only stay there for a moment, and then it will say, "No, let me play." We say to it, "You should be sitting here," but it answers, "No, I don't like sitting here." Then we give the child a beautiful toy and say again, "Sit here." Yes, for the sake of the toy, it will sit for a moment. But the next moment it will take the toy and go away. "Let me have my freedom," it says. Does this not show that the purpose of life is freedom? As long as man is ignorant of this, he is ignorant of the secret of his own nature and the secret of any other. Neither he nor anyone else can be happy, however much wealth or property, grandeur of position or palaces he may possess. Interdependence is the law of nature. We make our life by sharing the joys and pleasures and sorrows of another, but it takes us a very long time to understand this one thing. Our observation and study of man's nature show that his life demands freedom. And yet, on the other hand, we find that selfishness develops naturally in man, more than in any other creature. The demands of his life are so much greater, and he becomes so absorbed in satisfying these demands, and possessing and enjoying them when he has them, that he really forgets the secret of nature. He forgets the secret of his own happiness as well as that of others. Not only does individual man seek freedom, but also the nations and races and peoples throughout the whole world have been absorbed in the pursuit of freedom. Whenever wars have occurred, whenever there has been bloodshed in the world, whenever there have been revolutions and upheavals in life, all the various disasters that have taken place are due to these same causes. On the one side man's selfishness, and on the other his lack of understanding of the law of nature and the law of happiness. Ignorance of this law exists in the human soul from childhood. When a child sees anything that is attractive and beautiful, it at once wants to have it, never thinking whose it might be. "No one shall touch it. That shall belong to me," it says. "I shall only be happy when I have what that other child has." Even if it already has a beautiful toy, it still wants to have what the other one has. This is human nature, which goes on developing regardless of the secret happiness which can only be disclosed when the veil of ignorance has fallen from man's eyes. He never understands what justice is, even though he may speak of it. Real justice cannot be perceived until the veil of selfishness has been removed from his eyes. The least spark of selfishness will prevent man from being just. He will continue to have a partial interest, because he will be looking after his own interest. Whatever furthers his own interests, he will call his right and his justice. The prophets and the holy ones have all recognized the justice of God as the only real justice. What is the nature of the justice of God? It cannot be read in scripture, it cannot be learned from a book, It can only be learned from the self within after selfishness has been removed. Our limited self is like a wall separating us from the self of God. God is as far away from us as that wall is thick. The wisdom and justice of God are within us, and yet they are far away under the covering of the veil of the limited self. Whoever has arrived at that realization of the nature of God's justice is able to see all things in a different way from others. His whole outlook on life becomes different. From the most ancient times, teachers have come as messengers, one after the other, in order to instruct man in this law of God's justice, the law of cooperation, the law of love amongst men. That which Christ taught, they taught. For that has always been their work. But it is the way in which education and new reforms have worked out in modern civilization that has covered the real spirit of religion. The nations gradually unlearned what true religion was and became more and more depraved. Christ came to reawaken the ancient truth. And then Muhammad formed not only a nation with his spiritual message, but also a school in which love, cooperation, equality, and democracy could be learned. The truth that on the dependence of men on one another the happiness of humanity depends. Hence, it is written, every Muslim is a brother of another Muslim. If a king and a prime minister are offering a prayer, a poor man can stand beside them and offer his prayers with them. How was the original spirit changed? For at first Islam taught the world both directly and indirectly. Directly to the followers of Islam, indirectly to humanity at large. Before the spirit changed, the religion was given by the Prophet, but afterwards the religion was used as the instrument for forming a nation. Instead of a nation being the protector of religion, the religion became the protector of a nation. The desire to attain a God ideal was degraded into a desire to attain a national ideal in order to satisfy a selfish motive. No sooner did that spirit enter Islam than the whole building tumbled down. In the history of the world, this lesson has been taught not once, but 1,000 times. As long as a nation works for the interest of God and humanity, it will always be prosperous, but as soon as it uses religion in order to exalt the national ideal, then it falls down like a house of cards. We can see this in the history of Hinduism, in the history of Islam, in the history of European religious sects. If there is the wish to rise, the ideal must be high. If there is the desire to fall, let the ideal be low. It is the love of the earth that will attract man to the earth. But it is the love of heaven that will attract him to heaven. It is as the Bible says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. When the whole of man's ideal in life is his degree of education, his success in trade, all towards exalting the self, the individuality, then he is descending and not ascending. He is selfish as an individual, he becomes selfish as a nation, then as a race, and at last there is warfare. The racial ideal expresses its selfishness in great wars. Even people of the same nation will fight against one another. The same thing develops further when it appears between classes and parties, between labor and capital, the higher against the lower. All of them have a wrong ideal. Selfishness is allowed to rule instead of the higher ideal. And even that is not the end. The next thing which develops is disharmony of sex. Families become inharmonious because of the selfish ideal. The husband wants his own way, the wife wants her own way. The husband thinks, as long as I am happy, that is all that is necessary. In whatever direction you may journey in life, you will meet with this tendency. Selfishness may begin with the thought, as long as my country is benefited, that benefits me, and then it will narrow down to, if my family is benefited, if we become wealthy and have desirable things, that is sufficient for the present. And then it narrows down again, for my father or mother or wife or children until it ends in, nothing matters as long as I am happy myself. Man has now become cold, ignorant, and blind to the law that life depends on the happiness of those with whom we live. The whole of life is one. In all these different names and manifestations, life is one. The true thought is, if my wife is not happy, if my children, my neighbors, my servants are not happy, how can I ever be happy? An insult given to someone will one day return. How simple it is. Yet how difficult for man to understand. It is simple to him who observes life keenly. It is difficult to him who is absorbed in himself. Life is nothing but this. Life is not a particular philosophy, not a particular faith, not a particular religion, not a particular code of morals. Life is that dependence upon our surroundings, upon the life of our neighbors, upon the life of the nation, upon the life of the whole world. That is what keen observation and wide outlook on life teaches man. How the peace of the world has suffered during the past few years. Do not think that the effect of this suffering has not been felt by all the other nations, even though they were not actually engaged in the war. The effect has spread both directly and indirectly throughout the whole world. The whole of humanity has gone through this pain. Even the fishes of the sea have suffered with man in the catastrophe. The invisible beings have also suffered. It is all one life. How could it be otherwise? If a wound in the foot has an effect on the arm, even though the arm is not wounded, if the pain has its effect upon the whole body, how can it be otherwise between nation and nation? We can see the operation of this law even in our own circle. When there is someone among our own acquaintances who is poor, someone among the servants or relatives depending on us, who is helpless or in distress, suppose we cause him trouble or do him some injury, even though we may not know of it at the time, some day later on we shall discover it. It will return to us. It may return through some other channel. We may be too blind to see that it has originally come from that source. We may not see if we are in Africa that the harm has come from someone in China. But life is nevertheless all one. Similarly, when we bring joy and pleasure and happiness, it is never lost any more than is anything harmful or injurious, or of a troublesome nature. Good deeds, kindness, forgiveness, tolerance, acts of love, none of these are ever lost, and someday they will return to us. Even if the recipient appears ungrateful or heedless, it is all the same. There is no need to be disappointed even if he proves to be unworthy of our kindness and our love. When we realize that all life is one life, we discover that it is to that life that we give our love and kindness and mercy. Then it is bound to return to us, if not today, perhaps next week. If not next week, perhaps next year. If not here, then somewhere where we never expected it could possibly come. Thou shalt find it after many days. Though there may still be time to awaken to a true understanding of these things, it is often too late by the time that sufferings, troubles, and misery have come to the individual or to the multitude. If someone has so far failed to understand them before they actually came, perhaps he will never understand. When there is some little pain or he feels bad in himself, he may think he has some illness. But if he does not think about it, if he takes no notice of it, something worse may come. And so it has been with the world. The worst evil that has ever been should show man that it is now time to awaken and understand that it is not a study of national or social problems, not a study of religious questions that will bring an everlasting peace, but it is the insight into life which is the real religion, and which alone can help man to understand life. What is that religion? It is nature's religion of freedom, the religion that will liberate man. When man sees that the ideal of every soul is freedom, and that he cannot enjoy his own freedom unless he has shared his freedom with others, then, and only then, can troubles and unhappiness cease. A Hindustani poet says, "It is for sympathy that we have created man, not that he should worship God." There are so many angels in heaven who constantly worship God. Therefore man, being the final manifestation, is supposed to do something different from the angelic world. God says, "We have made man to sympathize with his fellow man, to be serviceable to others, to give joy and peace to others." Until he does that, he is not really man. The animals are selfish. They all seek their own life's demands, and the satisfaction of their passions is their life. Their understanding of happiness is that it is just this gratification. Birds make their nests. Animals have their holes. Therefore, if the only ideal necessary for man were that he should attain comfort and wealth and position, he would be no different from the lower creation. The great difference is that man has the power of sympathizing. He it is who can say, "My mother has taken care of me. Now she is old. I must listen to her. I must tolerate her hard words. Perhaps she has only misunderstood. I was very disagreeable at one time, and yet my mother was always patient and kind and attentive through it all." If one's father has become old, if our friends are in difficulty, in every case we must have sympathy. Not like the animals who bite their aged ones and forget their mothers and fathers when their own needs are satisfied, but like him who thinks gratefully of his aged mother and of the wife to whom he is united to share in sorrows and joys, and to find in what way they are able to serve one another. He is a man who thinks, though in business we have to make money and profit, yet, by proving ourselves sincere and true in heart, by proving ourselves honest and earnest, the business will increase still more and remain secure. He is a man who in national, social, and racial ideals, in the ideals of the whole of humanity, looks at nature with wide open eyes, and can perceive that the whole of life is one, that all individuals are one embodiment of life. He who perceives this realizes, "What I have taken from another, I have lost. What I have given to another, I have gained. Whatever good I have done to another is my gain, and whatever good another has done to me is my loss." The kindness, the service, the love and sympathy that another has given are all lost when the giver is gone. It could only be there so long as he was there. But deeds of goodness, of kindness, of consideration done to another, will remain with him who does them both here and hereafter. Democracy. There is nothing new under the sun, said Solomon, the wise. Man thinks that democracy is something which has been developed in the spirit of man, and which he had never known before. He thinks the democratic way is not only right, but new. But when we think deeply, we see that life is the same, the ideals are the same. Nature's laws are the same in all ages. And therefore, these two aspects, the spirit of dependence and independence, have always existed and have always manifested in their time. For instance, every soul knows that in its own life the very first aspect to be experienced is the aspect of dependence. The infant is dependent upon its mother and father. In whatever way they direct him, he acts and works. Then comes the time when he is old enough to understand his own affairs, and he says, "Yes, Father, that is what I want to do, and I will do it." The father and mother say, "Yes, our child has grown up and he understands his own way. We should not interfere with him." Thus we see that in everybody's life there have been two phases. The phase of dependence and the phase of independence. It is exactly the same in the lives of peoples, of communities, and of nations. It is always the same. At first dependence, then independence. At first autocracy, then democracy. The life and evolution of the individual and the multitude are alike. As freedom is the nature of every soul, so the child, even from infancy, seeks freedom. We want the child to sit in our arms, but it prefers to go and play. An animal, a dog, or a cat, which depends so much on the sympathy of mankind, still does not wish to be deprived of freedom. This shows that at every stage of development life is trying to become free. That is why it is true to say that the spirit of democracy is not a thing just of today. It has existed in all ages. Sometimes its appearance has been timely, and sometimes untimely. When we trace the cause, the reason for the spirit of democracy, we find that it lies in idealism. The human race first developed a thought of idealism in itself. Religions, learning, education have all emerged from this one human tendency. And what is this idealism? It is the silent consideration, the recognition of affection and attachment, which we even see in beasts and birds. We see that deer recognize their mates, and pigeons and doves have a kind of attachment for them. Sparrows and other birds share the responsibilities for their young with their mates. This all shows us that this ideal has only culminated in man. Call it religion, wisdom, learning, whatever one wishes, the only really human thing is idealism. As soon as a man begins to think, "These are my parents, and I would like to take care of them, so that they may not have the cares and struggles of life," he shows idealism. Then the ideal extends to his neighbors. "When I was young I could not help them. Now I can help them, and I will look after my neighbor's home and protect it from robbery." Then comes consideration for his life's partner, the queen of the home. As man then sees the beauty of life, he begins to develop his thoughts and imagination, making beautiful forms, which shape themselves into beautiful ideals. He expands the ideal and becomes capable of higher ideals. Motherhood is regarded by everybody with veneration. Fatherhood is regarded by everyone with respect. Neighborliness is looked upon with friendly feelings. The elders, chiefs, or kings in the village or town, who have given all their thoughts to the welfare of that town or village, how are they regarded? The people say, "Here is our father who looked after us all when we were helpless or ignorant." In this way the idea of a king or Raja came into being, through the development of a certain kind of ideal. The civilization of every age or time always originates in idealism. The whole source of civilization is idealism and nothing else. In ancient times the religion and the nation went hand in hand. There is no doubt that there is a great advantage in this when we compare it with later times, for no nation without religion or spiritual ideal, and based only on material values, can suffice the needs of a world that seeks lasting peace. However developed or learned a person may be, If he is not in touch with the spiritual point of view, he remains selfish. His outlook on life is not impartial. His justice is self-made. How can he claim to be a just ruler? The two things originated together. The history of Khusru, the old king of Persia, who was both prophet and king, shows this. His feeling was, my subjects are my children, more than my children, nearer and closer than my children. Their interest is my interest, for them I live, for them I was born. My whole life is for them. The whole life of the country was based on that example, that king's ideal. He was the instructor, the preacher, the ruler. He ruled according to the spiritual law. Solomon was also the prophet and king at the same time, and so was Rama, the Hindu king. Think of the impression they have left. It is so many centuries ago, and yet however many kings have come and gone since then, the impression made by Rama still remains in the Hindu race. There are temples and shrines, and in them an image of the king whose life was spent for the welfare of subjects. A figurehead or leader is always the ideal which the people will follow in every age, and is it not so today? When the president shaves his beard, everyone does the same. Man keeps on saying, I will get rid of this idol, but he can never get rid of it. It is human nature. From infancy man wishes to imitate somebody's walk, or movement, or expression, or way of talking. God is beautiful, and he loves beauty. He loves beauty through every soul, expressed in movement, word, in whatever way beauty comes. He cannot help following beauty, whether it be in democracy or aristocracy. There is a story of a Persian king and a dervish. Now a dervish is a self-educated man, but one who knows and understands things. He is a free thinker. He does not abide by the law of society. He touches the depth of the truth and ignores all the superficial and artificial rules and laws of society and religion. He leads his life freely in thought and action. He is so happy in his philosophy that if he is clothed in rags and tatters, it matters nothing to him. This dervish was standing in the street along which the king was about to pass. In the front of the procession were the pages, and they were calling out to him, "Get out of the way, the procession of the king is coming." He said, "That is why." He went back a few steps, and when the pages had gone past, he came forward again and sat down in the same place. Again came the cry, this time from the courtiers, riding on beautiful horses. "Away, away, the king is coming." He said, "That is why," and went a few steps back, and then when they had passed he returned to the same place. Then came the chariot of the king. When the king saw him standing in the middle of the street, he gently bowed his head to the dervish, who smiled and said, "That is why." A young man who was watching this could not help laughing. He was curious about it too and asked the dervish, "Why do you say to everybody, 'That is why'?" He answered, "It is plain." The gentleness of the king was the reason why he acted so towards me. The dullness of the courtiers was why they were curt to me. The rudeness and crudeness of the pages and the bodyguard was why they were rude to me. For in the East they pay respect to holy men, even to a dervish. It is inevitable that the culture and education and thought that have been cultivated for centuries among families, communities, and peoples should manifest its effect. If one asks whether one person's mind is equal to another's or different, the answer is, it is never equal. There is an immeasurable difference between minds. One mind may be developed more than two, another more than 10, another more than 100, another more than 1,000 persons. One person whom we meet and talk to and sit with makes us feel as if we had been in heaven, so full is he of gentleness, knowledge, response, and goodness. With another, however open-minded we may be, we find that his manner, his point of view, everything, is repulsive, and we cannot help it. This shows that the root of civilization is idealism. The seedling was in aristocracy, the plant of civilization grows in aristocracy, and the climax comes in autocracy, for it is comfort and power that have always blinded men. We always find people who are without money more thoughtful and considerate than those who have wealth. Those blinded with wealth have no time to think of another person. Even helpless people will have sympathy and share our pain, while those who have the power to help do not. This aristocracy on one side, and on the other side the authority of a church with temporal power, both reach a climax when they are blinded by the power of wealth. The aristocracy, which was the virtue and culmination of civilization, turns into aristocracy. And once that aristocracy begins, whether king, president, elder, or head of a family, there arises a bureaucracy. What the king does, the officer does. What he does, the policeman, the constable, and everybody else does. As it is said in Sanskrit, as the king is, so becomes the subject. Everybody values the leader. An autocratic leader produces an effect on every person, making him an autocrat himself. If the king is fond of luxury, the man whose duty it is to wait on the king also becomes fond of ease and comfort. He is too lazy to get up in the morning because the king is lazy also. When this is so, it means that the time has come for another form of life to appear. That is why there come wars, revolutions, floods, strikes, rebellions. These are all signs that life is going to change. It is not only today. It has been so in all ages. Such signs always mean the change from autocracy to bureaucracy, and then the new era begins, the era of democracy. By the time that this new period has arrived, the spirit of independence has become ready to meet it. When this spirit is understood wrongly, it becomes a time of great trial to the world and humanity at large. When violence comes, rudeness and crudeness predominate in social life, and disregard of the true spirit of religion and of consideration for others, these are the degradation of democracy. Human nature is just like goats and sheep. Where one goes, 20 will follow, and 50 more want to walk behind. So it is with man. One comes and seeks democracy, and the others follow without knowing what democracy is. Democracy is not a craze, not lunacy, not a spell, it is the maturity of souls, that is the real democracy. The soul now feels the responsibility, the value of its own power, the latent power and inspiration, which it possesses. It does not necessarily mean breaking with church or religion or law, nor a disturbance. These would be a degradation of civilization. Where can this spirit, this true spirit, be learned? From socialism? Only a little. From politics? Only partially. The view of the politician is a partial view. In the law courts, the pleader may tell the truth, but the other side may also tell the truth. Politics may give education, but the perfection of democracy can only be learned from the real science or religion, from the spiritual ideal. Real spiritual democracy we see in Jesus Christ. According to their law, some of the theologians and Pharisees wished to accuse the people who had sinned, but he told them to let him who had never sinned throw the first stone. That was the outlook of democracy. and that Christ suggested that human nature was everywhere. See the picture of the Master washing the feet of his disciples. Then in the life of the prophet we read of a Negro slave, whom the prophet's grandson called by his name. The prophet said, "That is not good manners. Call him uncle, he is older than you." He taught his followers that in the house of God, there is no distinction between king and servant. The place of prayer should not be for rich people only. All can pray together, shoulder to shoulder. The sultan and the beggar can meet and pray thus. That is democracy. Whence did it come? It came from the depth of religion. It came from spiritual law. However humble and low a person may be in occupation and evolution, we are nonetheless interdependent and require his help and service as he needs ours. However much wealth or power or rank we possess, we still depend upon the humblest and poorest person in the world. The realization that the whole of life must be give and take is the realization of the spiritual truth and the fact of true democracy. Not until this spirit is formed in the individual himself can the whole world be raised to a higher grade of evolution. Spiritual democracy. In point of fact, democracy is always spiritual. There cannot be a material democracy. People call any system democracy which appears or which claims to be democratic, even if it proves upon examination to be only a shadow of democracy. There cannot be two goals. There is only one. The birth of true democracy is in the spiritual ideal, and as long as there is no spiritual light to guide man's life, he does not know the real democracy. There are two stages in the life of every individual, in the life of a nation, of a community, of a race, of the world. The minor period and the major period. The minor period is when a man realizes that there are others who have experienced life more than he, and that is the beginning of his career. He then accepts the help and advice of those who have more experience than he. This is the preparatory stage, which leads to democracy. No parents think it wise that from the moment a child is born, it should be permitted to act without any direction or advice. What really happens is that when the preparatory period is despised, then instead of democracy, anarchy comes and takes its place. True democracy means rising from the lower stage to the higher stage, and false democracy is pulling those at a higher stage down to the lower stage. In some respects, a man shows childishness all through his life. Very often, too, he has the same characteristics that one sees in sheep which flock together. None of them knows where they are going, but one leads and the rest follow. One man cries democracy, and no one knows where it goes, what it will become, or what the result will be. As every moment in the life of a human being is one of growth and development in which he learns something of every kind of experience, so in every period civilization takes a certain direction, develops in a certain way, builds up something. Then spectators of this civilization can have two attitudes. The one who thinks it is not his ideal of civilization and wants to break it all to pieces, and the attitude of the other is that before wanting to break anything, he first wonders what is good, what can be preserved and what should be discarded. This person can do a great deal of good by his attitude. He sees what is beautiful and valuable, and the whole that can be made of the existing parts. The tendency to destroy all the beauty and culture of life is not real democracy. Whatever nation or race has that tendency will destroy the beauty and culture of centuries. The right tendency is the one which comes from a spiritual ideal. The wrong tendency is the one which comes from man's egoism. What today is springing up as the democratic ideal comes from a material ideal. Men, revolting and agitating against others, who have some culture, beauty, power, or possessions, want to crush and destroy all these. But democracy born of a spiritual ideal is different. It teaches the true human brotherhood. It teaches the true equality of man, recognizing it in the source and goal of every person, which is always the same. A real democrat is the God-realized man for whom the world is an open page. It is not he who destroys beauty for selfish purposes. It is the realization of the beginning and the end, where we come from and whither we go, which is the real spirit of democracy, the realization of the one life. If there is not that idea of spirituality, then there are only parties of Democrats fighting for political aims, for business interests. This is no real democracy. It is a pretense. When a person has not yet come to that stage, where he can give his whole life for his ideal, what is he? Selfishness is a lock that closes the door to democracy. Today democracy is laid claim to by those who are working on a basis of selfishness. Man, however, should consider not only national interest, but the interests of the whole of humanity. This should be his sacred duty. For a long time, nationalism has existed, and the World War I has proved that nationalism cannot solve today's problems. There is a great good that man can do by this example in life, by an example of the absence of egoism. If any nation can do good, it will be by working not only for its own interests, and then others will follow, for it is the nature of the soul. How can this spirit be awakened? No doubt every activity like the League of Nations, every institution of this kind is good, but not sufficient. What is needed is religious awakening. The awakening of that religion which is of every soul, not of a particular sector faith. If the spirit of democracy is born, it will only be born in the hearts awakened to the spiritual life. Every faith and belief has its principles, right or wrong, good or bad. Some follow these, others do not. They are given to humanity for a certain race. Whenever a spiritual wave has come to the world, in the time when the prophets and great teachers of humanity, it has always been a great spiritual ideal to awaken democracy. In the scriptures of Zarathustra, in the Bible, in the Quran, in the Kabbalah, it is always the same voice teaching the equality of man and love for one's brethren. Whenever there has been a wave of social reform, however good the service it has performed, it has never been able to kindle the spirit of universality. This shows that a reformer is the child of civilization. The prophet is the father. One ideal comes from the heart of an intellectual man, the other from the Spirit of God, expressed by man. The message of God is not a system which is only given for a certain period, after which the world is deprived of it. It is Alpha and Omega, and has pronounced softly or loudly the same words in all periods. Advancement or progress is not standing still and stopping at one ideal or principle. Progress is life. Standing still is death. When a person becomes hardened in his feelings, when his only interest is for the family or the nation, he does not go further, he is dead. But as long as he is advancing from a family to a nation, to a race, he is alive. He is progressing. The great disaster that has come upon humanity in recent years is caused by this death. The feeling confined in nationalism has burst out in conflict. This is not only visible in nations, but also in religious forms, in communities. Destruction is always the result when man does not progress. The mystical explanation of this is found in the Bible, where it is said, "In God, we live and move and have our being," and it is said also that God is love. We can say that we live and have our being in love. When selfishness eats up that divine spirit which is in man, he is dead. His heart is dead. He is only seemingly alive. Many people seem to be alive, but only rarely do we meet one who is really alive. The greatest progress is a constant expansion of the divine spirit. Expansion in any direction so long as the ideal of unity is applied. This is the ideal of the Sufis. It is not the desire of the Sufis that all should become members of the Sufi movement. But the ideal of its members is to invite humans to become members of humanity. Sufism is not a new religion or community. It does not want to add a community to the world. It is an attitude of life, not taught by any particular principle or dogma. It is to tune oneself to a certain pitch so that the heart can become tuned to the Lord. This is the only religion that exists. This is the only message that Christ gave. There cannot be two religions, truths, or gods if our mind is clear. But to understand this religion, it needs tuning. And to fight in order to make people believe this is not the ideal. What is necessary now is understanding another person's point of view, to see with two eyes instead of one. Why is there so much misunderstanding? It is because of using one eye instead of two. There is another side to religion. The esoteric side, that part of religion which prepares man by prayer and other forms of worship to receive the blessings of God from within. Without that blessing, it is difficult to become illuminated. There comes a stage in man's life when he begins to inquire, is this all? Or is there still more to understand? And that is why he starts looking for a teacher. It is this need in man's life which the Sufi movement tries to help. It is the contact with the teacher, study, meditation, silence, repose, which makes one understand one's own religion, the inner side of religion. The Sufis' idea is that man in time may arrive at that stage of understanding, where he can hear the voice of God from all sources, all sides, all things, and all beings. There is a saying of Sadi. Every leaf of the tree becomes as a page of the sacred book when the eyes are opened and the sight is keen. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.